had its last day of classes on Monday and now engaged in the region testing through next Thursday. Our elementary and middle school students have classes through next Thursday or Friday, depending on the school. Remember that all of our elementary schools end the year with half days on Thursday and Friday. We are looking forward to celebrating the class of 2017 at Albany High's commencement exercise on Sunday, June 25th at the Times Union Center. I joined the members of the Albany High staff for a tour of the TU Center this week. We have outgrown the UAlbany CEFCU Arena, and I know our students and families will love this new venue. It is a great experience for us all. And we have outgrown the CEFCU Arena, so that's a good thing. We have an exciting development for our new middle school on the agenda tonight. I also wanted to take the opportunity for a brief update on the renovations at 50 North Lark. Crews have been getting started with the preliminary work this week during the after-school hours. Full renovation will kick into high gear beginning Monday, June 26th, and then it will be full speed ahead to September 5th. We have a tight timeline, but I'm confident that our new middle school will be ready to welcome our students when the new school year begins. We are getting closer to launching our first cohort of students in the Embedded Masters of Arts teaching in partnership with NYU Steinhardt. The application period closed this past Monday. We have 10 candidates for the first cohort at this time. All are well qualified, and we are looking forward to the journey beginning July. We also are hopeful that the State Education Department will approve NYU's application to offer special education certification through the EMAT program. We would look to add 5 additional candidates if this goes through. Albany High School had 3 student athletes finish in the top 10 in their events at the last weekend's state track and field championships. Senior Eileen Paquette made it to states for the 3rd year in a row in the pentathlon. Thank you. She had her best finish ever, placing 4th overall. Senior Saeed Holzclaw competed in the 400 meters, placed 7th, and senior Kevin Mitchell came in 8th in the 400 hurdles. I want to extend my congratulations to each of these student athletes on their excellent performances. I would also like to recognize another senior who excelled in classrooms in athletics. U.S. Lacrosse has recognized Laura Bulmer as an academic All-American. Laura was among the top midfielders in the Suburban Council this spring and also carries a 97.3 GPA. She will be attending Northeastern University in the fall. Laura is one of just 6 local students recognized as academic All-American girls in lacrosse, an outstanding and well-deserved achievement. Yesterday, we had the pleasure of being here at Toast, welcoming the Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul to Thomas O'Brien Science and Technology on yesterday morning in the library. Lieutenant Governor chose Toast to kick off her summer reading advocacy tour, and it was a great event with a very important message to our students. The Lieutenant Governor talked with our 4th grade students about the importance of reading all year round, but especially in the summer months. She also presented the students and the school with a donation of books from Scholastic. We are grateful for her and her support and partnership. And speaking of great partnerships, at the State of New York, representatives from the Office of General Services visited Albany High during the lunch shifts Monday to recruit students for the summer jobs program. We had 40 of our students fill out application. This is an ongoing partnership with OGS to provide career pathways for our students. This past year, 15 Albany High students participated in a program during the 16-17 school year as interns, and OGS is now looking to have a cohort of 20 students next year. I just want to also note, of the 15 students, they all will have summer jobs, and 4 of the 15 will be going on to have permanent state jobs when they graduate on June 25th. So they can actually, I think they're starting July 5th with permanent state jobs. These employment opportunities are available to our community members as well. OGS has an array of opportunities available and expects that the trend to continue for the several years as its workforce ages. There are OGS applications available here tonight. Please pick one up if you're interested, on the table in the back. And at this time, I want to bring forth a dynamic principal of this wonderful school, which is we call Toast, And that is Teresa Brown, and she's going to do a presentation representing her school.
Hello. Welcome to Toast, Board of Education, Superintendent, Assistant Superintendents, and our new candidates for employment and some community members. We are Toast, Thomas O'Brien Academy of Science and Technology, one of the magnet schools in our district. I have some of my friends here to present today, some of our technology students. I believe I have the clicker up here. I would like my students to help me say our Toast mission statement, which they probably have memorized. You ready? Let's go. Toast is to educate our school community through learning strategies that reinforce curiosity, discovery, problem solving, and creativity across the areas. Looks like we forgot observation up there. Okay. So we have some of our demographics. We have our faculty members up here. We call ourselves Team Toast. Some of us are new, some of us are long-standing members. We have, I'm not going to go through the whole list because it's a pretty typical list of the types of employees that are in the school. We have come pretty close this year in working together as a team. It's one of my initiatives to really get us to working together as a team with a new principal and some new staff members. We have quite a bit of diversity, as in most of the schools in our district. And quite recently, our ENL population is increasing, especially in the 6th grade. Since the middle schools are full, we've had quite a bit of ENL students coming into our 6th grades. So that is ever increasing. I'd like to give you a little bit of an update on our current SEP plan, not the new SEP plan, but the SEP plan from this recent year. The big focus was getting the learning targets aligned to the Common Core learning standards used in all of the classrooms. So all of our classrooms have those up and posted. The students refer to them, the teachers refer to them, and we want to get our students knowing what they're learning about, how they relate to the standards. We had a differentiation coach working with about 12 of our teachers this year, doing some really intense differentiated instruction coaching. Our ELA and math coaches delivered professional development on our new curriculum of Wonders and Envisions. We got our PBIS program back up and running with we decided to call our tickets Timberbucks because we are the Toast Timberwolves. So students exhibiting positive behavior receive Toast Timberbucks and are able to get prizes and awards and incentives for our Timberbucks program. Our attendance rate is 95%, which we're very proud of. We have a diligent attendance team at Toast. I'm very proud of it. In fact, my secretary it's her obsession. So we have great attendance at Toast. Our parent engagement team, I'm particularly proud of this year. It's a new team at Toast, and we partnered with WMHT and the Addiction Care Center to provide several different workshops for parents. We did some surveys with parents, and they wanted to know more about how they can help their students with behavior at home, as well as academics at home. And I'm going to pass around, the board can just look at something they just handed to me today. This is done in about 5 or 6 different languages, and it's telling our parents about all the different events that we have and if they plan on attending, because quite often our ENL families don't attend the events because they can't understand the brochures or posters that go home. So these are in 5 or 6 different languages translated. I thought you might like to take a look at that. They presented those to me just today. So some of our data having to do with the SEP plan from this particular year, we're particularly pleased with our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade cohorts that started from last year to this year. So last year's third graders to this year's fourth graders, and these are our ELA increases by points, conditional growth points, 16.3. And from fourth grade last year to fifth grade this year, 12.3. And from fifth grade last year to sixth grade this year, 12.1 for ELA. So we're making some increases in our ELA scores. Math is a little bit more difficult, but we are doing pretty well in third through sixth grades again. We have those scores, 16.7, 4.9, and 12 are the increases in those cohorts. We have some students making some cell science project out of food in that picture there. Whoops, went a little too far. Uh-oh. Help! I think I clicked that too much. I like buttons. This isn't a button. Yeah. Where were we? We were right there. So see, yeah. Okay. These are some of our celebrations that we have at Toast. This was our cultural fusion night. We have one of our ENL teachers there with a family. That's Amy Ackley. We have a peace parade, which we just had. We had a soapbox derby with one of our racers right over here. That was held in Schenectady. PBS assemblies. We had field day this week. ELA and STEAM nights, school spirit days, college Fridays, science fairs, famous turkey shoot, which Ms. Whipple can explain to you at some point if you really want to know what that is. Dad's breakfast, the Jungle Book performance, musical concerts, and science themes field trips. And that's just a few of the things that we do. There's certainly a lot more. Here's some pictures of our friends at the Soapbox Derby, which was last weekend, right, up in Schenectady. We have a science fair picture here, a visit to the New York State Museum, and our gospel choir singing at Cultural Fusion Night. Just recently, Ms. Whipple took two of our students, one of them is here tonight, and they won the Henry Johnson Second Annual Essay Contest, focusing on Stephen and Harriet Myers. And our winners are Quasi Sadler and Julian Navarro. And I'm going to turn this over now to some students that would like to talk about their roller coaster project that they did in computer science. This is Mrs. Whipple, our computer teacher.
Hi, everyone. I'm Deb Whipple. I've been a teacher in the district for 23 years now and focusing on computers in our school. Tonight we have some of our sixth graders. We've been working on moving more toward STEAM instead of STEM. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about STEM, but we want to add in the arts and music, so we've also added that into our building. So now we just move toward the STEAM title, and we work with all of the different special area teachers to try to integrate our curriculum into each of our areas. So this one happens to be our roller coaster unit. Luckily, through our district hardware grant and through our school budget, we were able to obtain some inexpensive 3D printers and 3D pens. So this was our first attempt to use them, and they were very excited. And next year we'll start right in September. All of the students are very eager to use all of this equipment. And I bought in one of my virtual reality fake cases. So we don't have the real ones yet, but they'll talk more about that. So I'm going to turn it over to them and let them explain how we got into this roller coaster unit, and they can tell you more about what they did.
Hi, my name is Nazay. Ms. Whipple had us working on another STEAM project. In case you're asking what does STEAM mean, it is science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And this time, it was on roller coasters. We first worked by ourselves to plan our own roller coasters. We watched videos and then created virtual roller coasters on the computer. Then we had to choose other students to work on a group project with. I will pass them out so you can see them.
Hi, my name is Casey. We all got together to form a group of 6 and made a design on a paper of a roller coaster. We talked about the parts that we each wanted to do and what we wanted it to look like. There is a car on a track that you can sit backwards or forwards in. The hardest part was finding the right scale for all the pieces for the roller coaster. My favorite part of the project was building the roller coaster and putting all the pieces together and finding how to put them together.
Hi, my name is Kamora. We chose the parts and the colors as a group and how we wanted it to look. We learned how to use the 3D pens and 3D printers to create a model that we have to show you. I made the tunnel for the project. My favorite part was putting the pieces all together.
Hi, my name is Tyera. I worked on finding the drop for the design. It was really hard to find the piece online to print. I had to look at different sites and look up different words to find the drop that would work. I worked with Nazé in the group to choose the final name for our roller coaster. My favorite part was using the virtual reality glasses and seeing what it would be like to ride a roller coaster in the virtual world.
Can we get real ones, please?
Hi, my name is Maison. We used a 3D pen to write the name of the roller coaster on the cardboard and the 3D printers to print some of the pieces. I printed the car and some of the tracks. My favorite part was putting all of the pieces together. The hardest part was finding the right sizes. This is our model project. We picked red, white, and blue because the name of the roller coaster is called Captain America, and those are the colors. I wish that we could make a bigger one and have it function.
Does anyone have any questions or information they would like to know? Going once?
Okay,
Going twice?
okay.
So
I have one. It's not really a question. I just wanted to say thank you so much. You guys are tremendous, and it makes me feel like I wish I could go to school again. Thank you so much for everything.
thank you.
Thank you very much for your attention to our project.
Dr. Wilkins, is that it? Okay. The Albany Board of Education welcomes district residents, parents, students, and other people to our meeting. Community involvement at board meetings is encouraged so that we can better understand your views. By law, individual student information and particular personnel issues cannot be discussed in public. We encourage you to share specific student or staff concerns with the superintendent or other appropriate staff. Please note that the board generally does not respond to public comment. If you need a response, please consider contacting us via email, phone, or postal mail. When recognized by the board president, please state your name and city of residence. Statements are restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes, and speakers will be notified by the board president when their time has expired. Andrew Willis?
Good evening. So, as always, I'm appreciative of the opportunity to meet and see our illustrious school board in action. This school brings back a lot of memories to myself because I spent a lot of days coming in and out, dealing with the faculty, trying to help my son understand how school really works. So it's good to be here again and to be able to talk to members of our school board. So we've been kind of following the activity, a lot of the progress that's been going on in the community. We've had an opportunity to deliver some discourse with you prior to today. So we just want to kind of report back what we kind of see in the street with our conversations, because we know that the school board is so diligent and interested in helping the community move along in the process of rebuilding Albany High and a lot of the other locations that will be key denominators in the economic building of our local communities. So a lot of the individuals, and one in particular, one young man in the street said to me, he said, you know, Mr. Willis, I've been talking to a couple of contractors and a couple of agencies that do training and things of that nature, and I'm trying to get involved in the work process. Someone needs to develop me or to help me develop so that I can use my skills in the trade industry to start to build my family, to start to make some adult-like decisions, some decisions that would help me to be able to move along my family and pull my family out of the street and put them on a better pathway to a productive future. So I said to him, well, the first thing you need to do is understand what's going on. And he said, well, okay, I'm talking to you. You tell me what's going on. I said, I was asking you. I'm still trying to understand what's going on. But what's going on is this. The organizations that usually are given the responsibility by the school board to facilitate the training and the apprenticeship programs and the inclusiveness of our community have let us down because they don't let us get on their projects. So we are expressing that message to you, and we hope that you take it and allow us, ECWA Local 102, to help with the training and apprenticeship program. Thanks again.
Thank you again, Mr. Willis. Thank you. Mr. Tillery?
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, board.
Lift up the mic and turn it on. Thanks,
First,
Elijah. Thank you.
I want to give accolades to the board for, this Albany High School project. I was born and raised here. Athlete. I have a daughter in Albany High right now, Khadijah Tillery. She's going into the 12th grade. She's a track star. She went to New York City and came in first place. And I have a nephew, Kyer Tillery, who's a football star. This is my home base. I'm very concerned about the jobs in the community because you see a lot of youngsters on the corners, and this is their, outlet. They go to the corners. And what do they do from the corners? We see selling drugs and drinking and, prisons and death. And I'm here hopefully trying to sidetrack that, or hopefully anyway. But I know that the Albany School High project has an integral part in rectifying and modifying our community. I'm with ECWA Local 102, and I took their classes in 2015 at the campus, the new campus down there up the street from Division 2, and they taught a lot of trades, and they helped a lot of people, approximately 150 people that were involved in the program. And this inspired me because this happened from inwardly, from the neighborhood. And it was exciting to see, and it motivated me, and it was incentive for me to, get involved into being an advocate for our community. I always talk to youngsters out there. There's no jobs. They don't have any jobs. So that's why, I talk about inclusion, including us in this project. I know all you people have a good heart. I can look in your eyes and tell. You know, and that's what it's really about. It's about altruism, caring for the welfare of others. You know, and you can't have a community but leave out a part of that community and, you know, and say that's part of the community, because literally it's not. The ECWA Local 102, they have all of the cards in place to help the community train and tutor, you know what I'm saying, and give the various trades that's needed to the youth and to adults for that matter, and for reentry, for people coming out of prison too. So it's a full package, a full program. You know, we just need your support. We need you to tell us what we should do in order to be included in this project. I appreciate every one of you on the board. You know what I'm saying? This is nothing about no race, no this or that, but you know what time it is. You know, the MWBE isn't working for us. It's not going to work. You know, it's not going to work. It's not going to work for us. You know, we need something different, you know, because it doesn't, first of all, most kids, most youngsters in the neighborhoods, a lot of them can't read and write, they're illiterate. But I just want to say we need your help, you know what I'm saying, and we need it like yesterday, you know, and this is not about, like I said before, any bias and discrimination. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me here, for speaking, and I'll be back, God willing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tillery. Routine consent. May I get a motion to entertain routine consent? Sure. Ms. Peretz?
So I promise it'll be quick. I'm Freda Peretz. I live in Albany. And what I want to say is this is the first time I've seen the Albany School District preparing itself to bring in other workers and to be inclusive. I'm usually up here saying other things, and I pray that I won't have to, because I really like to say good things. So I'm feeling good at the moment, and I again will put this out there. If anyone needs my help for anything, I am available. And let's make sure this really, really happens. This is a beautiful thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peretz. Can I get a motion to entertain routine consent? Ms. Smith, seconded by Ms. Roach. Any set-asides? Seeing none, all those in favor of routine consent? That is unanimous. Thank you.
Madam President?
Did I leave something out, Dr.
No,
Wilkins?
you did not. I'd like to make some congratulatory.
Yes, please. That was nice and quick.
Thank you. We have been honored to just approve some positions, and I'd like to have those folks that are in the audience stand and wave so people can see who you are. We have some new administrators for 15 North Lark, soon to be named something else, is Tia Cornell. Yep, there's Tia. She will be going to 50 North Lark, who will soon, hopefully by next month, have a new name. And our second appointee is Emma Steckman. Hi, Emma. Emma's going to Schuyler Achievement Academy. And we have Janet Escada Lavoy. Janet, she's going to Arbor Hill Elementary School. And Katie Stalker. Katie's going to this building, Toast. We also have Amy Irwin, I'm sorry, Amy. She's going to Ash. And we have the new principal for the newcomer school, which will be Rachel Steed. I don't know if he's here right now, but I do want to say thank you to Tim Fowler. And I'm not sure if he's here, but he is just an awesome administrator. Tim is resigning from the Albany City School District, and he's going back home to his original district, which is South Colony, to take a promotion. And at this time, I just want to say thank you to Tim. He is just an awesome, awesome administrator, and we are going to greatly miss him. And at the same time, I want to say congratulations to Elaine Gressler. She is now assuming the Assistant Director of Special Ed. And right behind her is Katie, I want to say McGill? Mago. And she is the CSC Chair. So we say congratulations. Thank you so much. And that concludes.
Thank you. It's always good news. Welcome to everybody on behalf of the whole board. We're thrilled to have you with us and working on behalf of all of our children. Mr. Hogan, you're sitting quietly there, even though number 7 is yours.
Thank you. Good evening. What I'm going to do is provide you with a year-end update. Our fiscal year ends June 30th, 2017. With that, I'm going to provide some year-end projections and talk about how that impacts our reserves and fund balance, and explain some options on what to do with the fund balance, and we will proceed from there. So at the close of the fiscal year this month, we're anticipating that there will be a $4.6 million deficit, but it's really due to one-time expenditures for the purchase of 395 Elk Street and the local share of the 50 North Lark capital project that's going on there, will be going on this summer. We had actually planned for about a $5.7 million deficit, so this is, we're within what our expectations in terms of our fiscal operations for that year. And it's always better, if you're going to have a deficit, to have it be attributable to one-time expenditures that will not reoccur next year. So this is what we're projecting for the revenues. It shows the variances here. Our state aid is going to come in a little less than expected, but when we underspend our budget, it generates less state aid. But it's actually almost going to be a wash because federal aid is coming in higher than expected. Our tax revenues are coming in over budget. That's really because of the counties paying catch-up for back taxes. And then some additional revenues and local revenue. So we expect revenues to come in about $1.4 million more than budgeted, which is a good thing. On the expenditure side of the budget, here are the variances where you see the parentheses. Salaries are going to come in under budget, about $1.4 million under budget. That's primarily due, we have about 1,700 employees, and we're not 100% staffed every single day of the year. So when there are staff vacancies during transitions over the course of the year, it adds up. It also impacts benefits. We're also going to have some savings in the pension systems, Social Security, workers' comp, and our health insurance, which is self-funded. So we're projecting our expenditures to be about $6 million under the budget plan, or less than the budget plan. So when you look at the total revenues we're anticipating versus the total expenditures, as I mentioned, it's about a $4.6 million deficit. This, when we close the financial records at the end of the fiscal year, it rolls into fund balance. And should this occur, the first bullet says our fund balance would be about $11.3 million, or 4.7% of next year's budget. There's actually a regulation that says that needs to be 4% as a maximum, so this is the reason that we're going to talk about this evening, what to do with excess fund balance. If we reduce the fund balance by $1.7 million, the second bullet, that would put our fund balance at about 4%. And if we reduce the fund balance by $2.4 million, that would put us closer to 3.71%. You have to keep in mind, everything you're looking at is projections. There are hundreds of transactions a day, sometimes thousands of transactions a day. So with these target fund balances of 4.4% or 3.7%, those could be plus or minus even 0.5%. So in other words, the 4% could come in at 3.5% when everything is closed at the end of August, or it could be 4.5%. It could vary about 0.5% either way, just because of the nature of projections. So, we're going to talk about some options. We have excess fund balance, as I mentioned. What are some options or some things that we can do with that? But first I want to explain what reserves are. Reserves are essentially funds set aside to meet expected future payments, or they can be set aside for a specific purpose. From a financial standpoint, reserves are a tool you can use to smooth out spikes in the annual budget. You can smooth out if there was a big unfunded mandate, if state aid was reduced, or it can be used, as we've used it a lot in the past, for capital projects to help offset a tax increase. If you have money set aside for capital projects when you pass a referendum, you'll have some money already put up toward that cause. You won't have to increase taxes as much. The third bullet just speaks to the Office of the State Comptroller's Office, which pretty much audits us and regulates us, states that the practice of putting funds aside for specific purposes and the nature of reserves is a prudent financial practice. As I did mention, there are some limitations to our fund balance. You're limited to 4%, having 4% of the subsequent year's budget. This is just a governmental rule that, as the second bullet indicates, nonprofits typically carry significantly more than 4%. At 4%, we can basically do 2 payrolls and not even pay any vendors. So you can't even run the organization for more than a couple weeks on a 4% fund balance retainage. Currently, the year-end unassigned fund balance is projected to be 4.7%, as I mentioned. Last year, it was actually 4.21%. And the reason that it increased from 4.21% to 4.7% is that we didn't use as much as we had budgeted for, as we had planned on, which is a good thing when you underspend. So here's what our reserves are projected to be in 2016-17 in all of the categories. I just wanted to highlight some of the bigger ticket items like health insurance claims, debt service, and the last one, employee benefits of $9.8 million. There are already known liabilities or expenses for these reserves. So if you look at that group, it's almost $12 million out of the $18.5 million we have known expenditures or liabilities for, and that's about 65% of that $18.5 million. So a lot of this isn't money just sitting there for no purpose. The use of reserves, how much you can put in them, the rules to take the money out, it's all highly regulated. So the previous slides were the reserves and the fund balance section. This is what our fund balance would be at year end if we didn't take any action this evening. And as I indicated, you'll see the second line indicates 4.7% of unassigned fund balance, which is over the regulation of 4%. So the question is, what are some of the options we have to get the fund balance down from 4.7% down to about 4%? There's really 2 options. One is to reduce the tax levy that's already been approved by the voters. That's not recommended because when you do that, your revenues this fall would be less than budgeted. So when you prepare the subsequent year's budget, you're already below the budget. You're almost going to have to lower the revenue budget next year as soon as you kick off. So it really harms you in the subsequent year's budget if you lower it after the fact, which is what would happen if we did that this September. So it would be fine for 17-18, but as we sit down in February and March and April to do the 18-19 budget, there would be a big hole in the budget. So the recommendation is the second option, to allocate funds to reserves. and it offers several advantages. One is that we do have some known expenses coming up into the future, especially at the middle school level with the growing enrollment. Another advantage of reserves is that it'll stabilize the financial impact of financial downturns or unfunded mandates or unexpected expenditures. And by having reserves on hand, it reduces our need to borrow. And when you borrow money, there are not only the interest rate charges, but also the legal fees, because we're governmental. There's a lot of consultants involved every time we have to borrow money. So it actually saves the taxpayers money by having some money sitting in reserve, so you don't have to borrow money for cash flow for things like payroll. So the recommendation is to invest $2.4 million into the capital reserve to be used for future facilities need. This would reduce our fund balance into the range of 3.5 to 4%, which would be a target for the 4% threshold. We do have known capacity issues at the middle school that may very well lead to an investment into the future, into facilities. The grade configuration will be, I think, the next board meeting, putting forth some recommendations. The other thing to keep in mind is bullet B, that we have 20 buildings in use with 11,000 people in them a day. That's equivalent to a small city, 11,000 people. So just with 11,000 people going through buildings every day, you can imagine the wear and tear and the upkeep and maintenance required. So reserves can help for those type of things, not the daily operations, but when you have to replace things like roofs and parking lots, and heating and cooling. The other thing by using capital reserves is there's a significant matching when we use our capital reserves and do facility projects. We get about 65 to 70% state aid when we create facilities projects. So by us putting money in our capital reserve, for every 25 to 30 cents we invest, the state will add another 65%, 65 to 70 cents to that. So for every 25 to 30 cents, we actually get to spend $1. The facilities projects generate aid. So it's a very good investment. If we could all invest 30 cents and be guaranteed $1, we would all sign up tomorrow. So it's a good investment for the community and the taxpayers. So with that, again, the recommendation would be to move $2.4 million from the fund balance into the capital reserve. The voters have already authorized the establishment of the capital reserve back in November of 2013, so we would just be putting more money into that cause. And I just want to remind everyone that there are a lot of rules against regarding this, so that the board has the authority to put money into the capital reserve, but the board can't by itself withdraw from the capital reserve. It actually takes the board to pass a resolution, and then there's a public referendum or a public vote on the referendum. So we can put money into the bank, the board can put money in, but to pull it out requires public approval. So with that, I will turn it back over to the president for questions.
And I keep forgetting we're in the chill mode of the table setting as our second meeting, so I should have called you Bill. So thanks, Bill. We will now go to Ellen. You have any questions?
I just have a quick question, and it's, can you remind me, is this capital reserve fund that fund that has a lifetime limit of how much money we can put in it?
Correct. It has, it was established up to 18 million. By putting 2.4 million in it will be about $1 million, $1.2 million from the maximum. So there's still a little bit of room in it.
Okay, thanks.
Jen?
No, thank you.
Sridhar? Vicki? Anne?
So, Bill, if the closing date of 395 Elk extends beyond the end of the fiscal year, how does that impact that $4 million that has been accounted for in these numbers?
Well, we'd be paying rent at about $33,000 a month. Certainly, we're going to intensify the pressure to close on the building. The other thing is we would be negotiating with the other party because the delays on the closing are not really the fault of the district at all. We were ready to close in late January.
Oh, I guess I'm asking, on your slide, you say the deficit is due to one-time expenditures related to the purchase of 395 Elk,
Correct.
but those expenditures would be in fiscal year 16, 17 in order to be accounted here, but if we don't close by that end of June?
Right,
how
no,
does that
we've
change
already,
things?
we're able to book, we have an executed sales contract, we're able to
So we can book the money
money
based on the
Yeah.
contract, even if the closing date hasn't come?
occurred.
That's what I needed to know. Excellent. And then my only other question, if you don't mind, since somebody else has a question, is why 2.4?
Because again, the target is to get the fund balance down to 3.5–4% range.
Okay.
Based on what we know today, that's a good estimate to go with.
I just want to say one other thing for people who are listening, that I wanted to make clear that Bill and Ellen had a conversation about how much room is left in the capital reserve, and we all know that when Bill said we have $1 million or $1.5 million left, that doesn't mean there's $16.5 million sitting in the capital reserve. There's only $4 million in the capital reserve. It'll be 6.5 after we add this. However, the way the capital reserve is structured, you can only put in that amount of money. Even after you spend it, you can't put in more. You can only put a total in of 18 million no matter how much you take out.
Right, and we've utilized the capital reserve. For example, the 14 buildings that got $14 million of work, which will finish up this summer, we did that without raising taxes. We built the dirt field without raising taxes. We are buying West Hill Middle School without raising taxes. So those are all the ways the capital reserve has benefited us within the last 18 months.
No, and that's not disputed, and you
Yeah.
articulated it well. I think what Ann's speaking to is that it seems counterintuitive that the law has you create a capital reserve fund that has, let's not use 18, let's use a round number of 10. And then you put in 2 this year, 2 next year. You do it across 5 years. And then you take that money out and it's down to 0, and you want to put the money in again because you're going to need capital improvements. The law doesn't allow you to do that because you already put your 10 in once. So the fact that you, have a passbook, that's how old I am, and the passbook says you have the bank account and it's empty, and you would think since it's open, you could put money in there. And you would still get the voters to let you release the money. It's not some slush fund. The problem is the law says no. So getting to law is a good segue. There's my very long introduction to my question, which is, do we have any updates at all on let's see, it's Thursday, so there's about 4 more days of session. And I know there are priority bills, and an uncontested bill is the one about increasing the fund balance, or the fund balance to 10% from 4. Any news on it?
I'm not aware of anything on that. If that does pass, that will certainly be a factor we consider in all of the future.
All right, 4 more
year-end.
days, so we'll see. Hopefully, like I said, for those that are interested, there's been it's not a contentious bill. It's just it seems to be a lot of bills all piling up for the last 4 days of session. So, all right, thank you so much. No more questions?
I think the board clerk has a resolution for you.
We're doing an add-on now, so, okay.
It was listed as an action. Yeah.
Right, okay, so there you go. So do you have something, shall I just read it off of there? Oh, thank you. So, drum roll.
It is that with 2.4 million.
Oh, I can read that and just add the words 2.4. So, can I get a motion to accept the resolution, whereas on November 5th, 2013, the voters of the City School District of Albany approved the creation of a capital reserve fund and the deposit into said fund monies from the general fund and or unassigned fund balance. It is hereby resolved that the sum of $2.4 million will be transferred from the unassigned fund balance to the capital reserve fund. Said transfer will occur prior to June 30th, 2017. Ms. Smith, seconded by Ms. Roach. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Dr. Wilkins.
I I wanted to also add that we have another member of our team that is going to a different location, and that is one of our cabinet members, Deborah Marriott, our HR director. And we are saddened to see you go, but we know you're going home with a good friend over there. So we appreciate the work that you have done. You will be greatly missed, but thank you so much. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
And Deborah, I just wanted to echo that on behalf of the board. Thank you for the work you've done on behalf of all the staff and children who are the beneficiaries of that in the City School District of Albany for the time you've been here. Thank you so much. We wish you well. Ms. Savage.
So it's my privilege to give an update on the superintendent search, which for those of you who come to board meetings regularly, you know we've been giving these updates from time to time, so this slide will look very familiar. This is our calendar, and that little dot that says today keeps moving to the right. So in the last few months, we have hired a search consultant and worked with them to plan a good process. We spent a significant amount of time on community input. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a second. We recruited a very good set of candidates, and we have spent the last couple of months working towards selection of that, and we are optimistic about coming to a completion on this contract, on the superintendent along the timeline that you see in front of you. And so, Andre, if you can advance the slide, I'm just going to remind people about the community input process that we did. It was January, which seems so long ago now, but we did an extensive number of focus groups, a public roundtable, we did a paper and online survey, and Andre's slide is slipping, and I have to remember what it says on the slide. Oh, we did a significant amount of individual outreach to leaders in the community, both elected and not elected. And the outcome from that was to develop a profile of what the City of Albany wanted in our new superintendent. And that profile had two purposes. One was to help identify candidates who would be appropriate for recruitment, and the second was to inform the board's selection among the recruited candidates. So we can move to the next slide. I want to say a special thank you to everyone who participated in that. 334 people in Albany participated in that effort, and I very much appreciate that. That included students, it included members of the local government, it included families, it had included representatives from clergy, from our bargaining units, some people would call those unions, that's a more familiar term, from PTAs, from our business community, from the non-union staff, and from not-for-profits, including our educational institutions around Albany. And all of them participated and fed that information into the board. And that all happened in December and January. From that, the next slide will show you the characteristics that were developed as the primary characteristics sought out of the new superintendent, and these are they. This picture shows you the brochure that was developed. This is very traditional in a superintendent search, to develop a brochure to sell the district to potential candidates and to inform potential candidates about what we want in a superintendent. And these were the 7 characteristics that were identified through that community process. And I think most of them will be familiar to people. I'm not going to read them verbatim, but they are a person with unquestioned integrity, a real focus on student achievement and a track record, demonstrated ability as a problem solver, experience in recruiting and selecting staff, since we know that's what's critical, is having the right people in the right positions, a person with very strong presence, and a history of strong engagement in our community, in a community with parents and students and community members. And finally, a demonstrated ability to develop positive culture and climate. So those were the characteristics that were promoted while we were recruiting candidates and selecting them. We used those characteristics to do a significant amount of outreach. Both our consultants did outreach to individual candidates that they thought would be good and appropriate, but we also did this kind of organizational outreach. As you'll see, there's an emphasis on New York State and also an emphasis on diverse candidates. We really wanted to have a candidate who represented Albany. Finally, I wanted to remind everyone that this search is a confidential search. And on the next slide, we talk a little bit about why we're doing a confidential search. Essentially, a confidential search means that no one knows at this point who the candidates were except the board. And we did that very intentionally. With a confidential search, we did a significant amount of community input in the beginning, but the selection is done by the board, and a public announcement will not be made until there's a contract with the superintendent. This is very different than what was done last time, and we did it on purpose because we have found that there was a very highly competitive environment for successful superintendents with experience in urban settings, and that those superintendents, for the most part, only apply to confidential searches, that they are likely satisfied and happy in their districts where they are and would not risk that in order to apply to a search that was not a closed one. Districts who've used both an open search and a closed search report a better quality and quantity of candidates in the confidential search. And our search consultants, every search consultant we spoke to, both the one we hired and everyone that we interviewed, strongly recommended that for Albany, we needed to do a confidential search. And so that's what we did. On the next slide, we had 28 candidates who applied by our March 31st deadline. We were very pleased with the quality of the candidates and the diversity of the candidates who applied. We did semifinalist interviews in May and finalist interviews in June, and we do anticipate that we'll be able to select a candidate by the end of the school year. It's a funny thing because in January everybody was thinking about this, and then it feels like it went away, and I know some people have not been thinking about it since, and now we're reaching to the end of the process. If the last slide reminds people, because these slides are available online as well, that if they want to stay informed about what's going on with this process as we come to the end here, they should be sure that they're signed up on SNN in the district news category, not only their school category. And that is what I have to offer on that.
Thank you, Ms. Savage, and again, I publicly thank you for your stewardship in this process. Now the SEPS plans. Oh no, I'm sorry, discussion and naming of the third middle school. And we welcome our two principals, our co-principals for 50 North Lark.
Good evening.
All right, good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing?
Great.
Good. Let me just start by saying thank you for having us tonight. Ms. Antonetti and I have been on quite the journey the past few weeks, a journey that entailed us trying to identify the best name for the new middle school. So tonight we would like to share those details of the journey with you and conclude with us sharing the name with you for your approval, of course. A little bit different than mine.
Oh, because it's not the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
It's the PowerPoint, it's not the PowerPoint, though. There we go.
Oh, that's the right one.
Yeah. We gotta go to the, no? Okay, one more.
Okay.
Okay, so when we started this journey, we knew that we wanted to give our students the opportunity to take part in this process, including recommending names of their own. So therefore, we decided to set some criteria, and we spoke and we narrowed it down to 2 themes that we would bring forth. One theme was an Albany theme, and what we did is we researched some notable Albany community figures, and then another theme was an academic theme, and then we thought of some names that had some academic terms like excel, success, excellence, perseverance, inspiration, or leadership. So what we did is we came up with our own ideas in those 2 themes, and then we gave the students the opportunity to choose a name that fit one of those themes. So one of the first person that we researched that was a prominent member of Albany's 19th century African American community was Dr. Thomas Elkins, and he was born in 1818. He was a doctor. He actually owned a pharmacy on North Swan Street, and it was later relocated to Broadway at Livingston Ave. And he was also an inventor. He was most notable for inventing the refrigeration apparatus. And what we found interesting is he lived a few doors down from Stephen and Harriet Myers, and he helped them in their local efforts of the Underground Railroad. So we thought he was an important person and maybe a name that we could consider. So 2 names we thought of were Thomas Elkins Middle School of Excellence and Elkins Middle School, or Elkins Middle School of Excellence. So those 2 names were 2 names brought forth to the students.
And another person we came across whom may look familiar was Mr. Edmund O'Neill. Mr. O'Neill was a prominent African-American figure within not just the city of Albany, but also really in the Auburn Hill area. He was actually the first African-American who was hired as an administrator within our own district, and he was also the first principal of Auburn Hill Elementary School. So we also thought it was very important to have that particular individual as an option for students to choose. Now, with that being said, the 2 names that were connected to Edmund O'Neill that we thought was very relevant was the Edmund O'Neill Middle School and O'Neill Middle School of Perseverance and Excellence. So those were some options that we presented to the students.
So then we moved on to some academic themes, and we brainstormed what could be some academic themes, and we came up with Lark Leadership Middle School. We came up with Lark Middle School of Perseverance and Excellence, and we also came up with Lark Middle School of Aspiration and Inspiration. All of these names were all on a ballot for our students to choose from.
And phase 2 of this amazing journey. So we visited each of the schools that are going to be feeding into 50 North Lark, and these visitations served dual purposes. One, it allowed us to meet our students to be and introduce ourselves, and also talk about some of our some expectations that we have for the students as they come into the new middle school. But 2, as Ms. Antonetti alluded to, provide the students an opportunity to chime in as to what they would like to see the name of the new middle school to be. So with that, we provided the students an opportunity to choose from the list that we provided them, as Ms. Antonetti alluded to, but also to come up with their own names as well. And let me tell you, some of those names were very creative. So once we collected the feedback from all of the schools and all of the students, we sat down for a couple of hours one day. We had some coffee, some soda. We really made a party out of it. And we reviewed all of the feedback. We narrowed the choices down to 6. 3 were based on the research list of 7 options that we provided to students. And that was Thomas Elkins Middle School, Edmund O'Neill Middle School, and Lark Leadership Middle School. 3 were based on a condensed list of names students suggested, and that was Lark Hill Middle School, Lark Street Academy, and Lark Middle School of Excellence. And that leads us into our final phase. We're almost at the stretch. The final phase of the journey included us convening a diverse committee of parents and students, and we tasked the committee with the following. We needed everyone to come to a majority consensus on selecting one potential name from the student choice list. That name was Lark Middle School of Excellence.
And then what we did is we combined the Lark Middle School of Excellence with the 3 top choices from the previous slide with, it's on this slide.
Mm-hmm. That was Thomas Elkins Middle School, Edmund O'Neill Middle School, and Lark Leadership Middle School. So that leaves us with 4
So they were able
choices.
to choose from those 4.
And then we came to a majority consensus regarding the name of our middle school. I feel like we should have drum rolls for like.
And the winner is?
A hybrid. Edmund O'Neill Academy of Excellence. Had the time and all. So once again, it was an amazing journey, and we know that this is just a name that we're proposing to you, and you will make the final decision. But we feel very, very good about this name, but we trust your judgment, and we will follow your lead.
Thank you, Malika and Candy. And you may know from the many board meetings that we do this, so the way the process works is we always have a discussion of something first,
Yep.
and then at the following board meeting, we have our action on it, and we try not to make exceptions to that unless it's really exigent circumstances, because then we get, process smacks us in the head sometimes when we
Sure.
make an allowance at one point. So that said, I really very much appreciate your presentation. I will put it around if anybody's got comments or questions. But then this will be on our July 13th agenda for action.
Okay.
And thank you for doing such wonderful work and putting an esteemed name up there. So, and I'm glad you did take out the perseverance part. Not that that's not an important trait, but I was trying to figure out how a sweatshirt would actually have that on there. And I thought, you at least condense it so you get it on a sweatshirt and you get it on a banner a little easier. So anyway, I'll start with Sridhar.
No questions, but it was interesting to hear about all the history that Albany has. And I am hoping that the ones that we didn't pick will also get represented somewhere else.
Sure.
Jen?
Thank you.
Ellen?
I just wanted to thank you for all the work you put forward researching, and I thought it was very appropriate that you did the research on notable Albanians and choosing a former educator. I think is really meaningful, as well as getting suggestions from the students that are going to attend the school. And the idea of naming the new school after Edmund O'Neill sounds really terrific. As far as the Academy of Excellence part, and I guess this is where I get a little pedantic. I think for consistency's sake, if our other two middle schools are named middle schools, we should name all our middle schools middle school so people know what they are. I mean, we have so many people where English isn't even their first language that I think we should be consistent in our labeling. I mean, I know some of our elementary schools are titled preparatory academies or achievement academies instead of elementary school, but I would like consistency where we label things according to what they are, because if I were to say, why is Myers a middle school and this an Academy of Excellence, I would assume that there was some quantitative or qualitative difference. Well, this is an academy because we have, instead of teams, we have forms, or instead of, we do something differently. I think the excellence is a wonderful idea, and to say Edmund O'Neill Middle School of Excellence or something would be really fantastic, because I love that you're including not just honoring a local educator, but also including words about achievement in there. But just for clarity, I like to see the word middle school in a middle school. That's just my opinion.
Vicki?
Yes, thank you. Wow, I'm very excited. I'll tell you why. My partner, Edmund O'Neill, is her father. And many of you, or I do know that there are people in this community who remember him very well, and perhaps even remember Angela as a little girl trotting around in that school after him. And I think, first of all, just the journey you talked about to get here with all these names, incredible. And I know you condensed that journey, but it felt like a long road, I'm sure. But I am just very proud and honored, and I'm sure that the family is going to be ecstatic. And I'm sure Angela's home right now with a few little tears welling up. But thank you for this work. And Mr. O'Neill, just the word perseverance was him, indeed. So maybe that gets reflected in the vision or mission of the school. But I just can imagine a nice celebration of community. There's still one more story. Angela goes to get her hair cut, and Miss Laquita Love does her hair. Now, I shouldn't say this, but Angela gets free haircuts because of her father, but just thank you very much all for your hard work, and we're very excited about this school. Thank you.
Anne?
So I'll just add that Vicki did a wonderful job of explaining why the name is so good, and I'll just echo the thanks for the process that you went through to get to it. To have the student-selected name is going to make it even more meaningful to the families that are going to be there, and I really appreciate the process that you used to do it.
Thank you so much. For all the reasons you said, having an educator, an African-American educator, have the school named after that person is, you can't really ask for a higher role model, especially since that gentleman was a gentleman and someone who, at least in my background, would fill the world, what we call a mensch, somebody who was just such a good person as well as so good at what he did, so that he actually stands in that sense, as a role model for children to aspire to. I'm sorry, Vicki wants to talk more about.
No. Just one other piece of research, and I'm told that Mr. O'Neill's father was the first African-American assistant principal at Hackett. Is that right? Okay. So just another addition to the legacy.
Well, also, everyone feared Edmund Sr., and he's also Rev. So Mr. O'Neill was a PK. So, yeah.
So the only thing I want to throw out to the board to consider for next time is what Ellen had talked about. I do want to respect the process and the kids, but I actually like her idea of substituting middle school for the word academy. And I'd have no problem, obviously, if Myers and Hackett want to add their own descriptive achievement word at the end of their names. But I do think that that does actually answer the question that it is a middle school. And I don't know how the rest of the board feels. That's just the two of us, but I would ask your thoughts on whether you think, how you think the reaction will be if what we do as a board is say the Edmund O'Neill, and I'm speaking for the rest of the board, but the Edmund O'Neill Middle School of Excellence.
So it's interesting that you brought that up, because our first choice was the Edmund O'Neill Middle School of Excellence. And so we thought a couple of things. One was the length of the name, and what's the acronym going to be, and then so that's why we sort of went back to the academy, because it was some of the other terms that the students use. So I would be okay with middle school if our technology department is okay with putting that long name in there. I mean,
Stephen and
Well,
Harriet
that was one of the-
Myers Middle School.
Right, and because
William
of that
S.
in toast, they're like, can you shorten it a little bit?
I
So
was just
that-
going to let you know, Candy, that is not an acronym. I'm looking at it.
know.
Other than Eon,
I know.
you're like Eon A, Eon A.
We played with that
So,
for
so
many,
that
many,
doesn't-
many
so you can
hours.
throw the acronym out the window.
Yeah.
Can I just get some input from the rest of the board on Ellen's suggestion? So Anne, everybody's nodding. So the takeaway on this, if it's okay with you, is that on the July, and you can always think about it and come back to us, but we would like, it sounds like all of us, on the July agenda, that we will be voting to approve the Edmund O'Neill Middle School of Excellence. And that would be Eon Massey.
Tongue twister. May I just say one more thing? I know some of our colleagues, our principal colleagues are here, and we just want to say thank you. They opened up their doors to us and allowed us to come into their buildings during very busy times to speak with the incoming students to 50 North Lark. I mean, our first presentation almost went for 2 hours at North Albany Academy, and Leslie did not blink an eye. So we just want to say thank you all. We appreciate it, and this journey also included you all. So thank you.
I don't want them to go yet. I just want to also say thank you to Malik and Candy, because they took an idea and ran with it, but they also are working principals. So they still had their own schools and all the work that they, I know, go figure. But I also just want to say thank you, because you were diligent. They went to meet all their kids. They have a lot planned for the summer months and getting the kids together. So I want to say thank you for the work that you're doing and the work that you're going to do. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. SEPS. School Comprehensive Education Plan, SEPS.
Good evening. Okay. Hello. Cecily and I, or should I say Dr. Wilson Turner, are here tonight to talk to you a little bit about the school comprehensive education plans. We know that you have reviewed them, so we will give you a little more information on the process overview, some of the trends that we saw throughout the review of the plans, as well as some challenges for consideration. So from October to May, all of our schools went through some type of a review based on the diagnostic tool for school and district effectiveness. We had 6 integrated intervention team reviews, and those had state education folks on those reviews, leading those reviews. We also had 6 school-led reviews with district oversight, so Cecily and I coordinated those reviews with district-level administrators as well. We had 2 demonstrable improvement indicator reviews for Albany High School and for SA as a result of their status of receivership. And then we also had quarterly progress monitoring of the the 2016-17 SEPs. From April through June, the buildings went through the SEP writing overview provided for the building leadership teams. We also had training with Dr. Yvette Jackson over the last several months, and Carmen Jimenez, and we spent probably 3 days, not consecutive days, but 3 days, April, May, and June, working with them to further develop our SEP plans. All of the building leadership teams or schools, except for SA and Albany High School, submitted a draft of their SEP to both Cecily and myself and the district improvement director. As a reminder, SA and Albany High School, because of their receivership status, did not have to submit a SEP. They had to submit a continuation plan in their 3rd quarterly report. From June and July, the final drafts of the SEPs are submitted to the Board of Ed. You have them now. With your feedback, we'll go back and make any changes and recommendations, and then for review in July and submit to the New York State Education Department by the end of July. Close out the current year's SEPs. I mentioned already about the 2 receivership schools not needing to submit. They have a continuation plan. And then finally, we have 2 schools in good standing, Montessori Magnet School and North Albany Academy. And because of their status, they did not have to write a SEP or go through a school review. However, we did have them write a SEP, so they have a improvement plan to continue their improvement efforts.
Before I talk about trends, Lori mentioned the work with On Point Leadership, Dr. Yvette Jackson and Carmen Jimenez, and the work around the SEPs. And really their work is much larger than that. Their work is really about working with our principals, instructional supervisors, and directors around leadership in general. It's true professional development for them. Every time we walk out, Lori goes, oh my God, they're so smart. Because Yvette Jackson, if you do not know her or remember her from NUA, her background is in brain research, and so everything she's training the principals in is around how you use brain research to leverage student growth and really working from a strengths-based model versus looking at deficits. And so they applied that to the SEP work because they know principals were deeply entrenched in that, and how you turn the SEP, even though it starts with what your need statement is, to what the strengths are of your building, begin to leverage that based on what you truly want to accomplish in your building. And I think that was an empowering experience for our principals. With that said, in looking at our previous year's SEPs, in the overview section, it talks about where buildings experienced the most growth. And most consistently throughout the buildings, I think in the cover memo I talked about 53% of buildings indicated that tenant 5 is where they feel like they're getting the most gains, or they're establishing the most systems around student social, emotional, developmental health. A couple other buildings mentioned tenant 6, a few mentioned tenants 2 and 3, but primarily district-wide it was tenant 5. So part of the SEP DTSDE process this year, what we tried to do, even in the state-led reviews, was to try to stay the course with the work that was started the previous year, wherever possible. However, some state reviewers or some reviews saw that some schools needed to take a step back from where their initial SEP was written and actually change course or take a different direction. However, we tried to be strategic about guiding those DTSD reviews to narrow the focus for our schools in the district, and that's why hopefully this year you notice some more consistency in terms of what schools are working on, but also recognize that each school is unique. Each school's leadership and teaching staff and students are in different places and therefore may approach what they are trying to accomplish in slightly different ways. With that said, in Tenet 2, we really drove buildings towards Tenet 2 being the monitoring tenet. So how do you monitor instruction and how do you monitor data effectively? And it links to really Tenet 1 and Tenet 2 on the DSIP that we're going to do with principals on building their capacity to monitor instruction and provide effective feedback and to utilize data in a systematic way. And so those things kind of sit in Tenet 2 in the building plans. You should have noticed also in Tenet 3 and Tenet 4 either a replication of activities or very similar activities. My explicit direction to the principals whom I worked with was Tenet 2, 3, and 4 should be aligned. They should be all related to the same thing. So what you are asking teachers to plan for, you should then see them implementing in Tenet 4 in instruction, and then you should be monitoring in Tenet 2 as part of the school leadership practices. So when you see differentiated instruction in Tenet 3, and then you see it again in Tenet 4, it's because you're planning for differentiated instruction under the curriculum and planning unit, and then you're delivering differentiated instruction in Tenet 4. And then Tenet 2, you should be coming behind and having a monitoring system for those pieces. And that's traditionally what you see throughout the SEPs. Tenet 5 is still either about building staff capacity to manage and support student social emotional health needs. People feel better about the systems that they built, but one of the things that was glaring in our focus groups with staff and with students was that teachers need more training and support on how to handle students who are struggling to be successful in class because of their behavior. And so that trend came to light. And then Tenet 6, family and community engagement, again, a little about being strategic and kind of pointing people in the direction of if we were able to give lift in the most powerful way, what could we do? And this came from families. We have a lot of events. We have too many events in some of our families' eyes. And I just have to share this comment that came out of more than one meeting. Yes, we come to the events that have food because that means I don't have to run home, prepare dinner, catch a bus, get back down to school, participate in your event, and then run home and get my kids ready. I know that that piece is taken care of. And so that's a huge deal for them. But being at those events, celebrating their children is really important, and then having a better sense of how they can help their children at home. They just need to understand the new Common Core math. That's it. All the other stuff is lovely. What you put in your plans is great. Can you just tell me how to help them at home with the homework or help them with these pieces? And so that's something that we tried to push into the plans as well, and that trend then came through, we felt, in the SEPs. Oh, I'm scanning here because I'm reading. So, I have a challenge for the board to consider. One of the things that I've noticed being in this role and then comparing it to being a principal in an elementary building writing a school comprehensive education plan a few years back is the difference of the timing. So when I was a principal, my team, my building leadership team would sit down over the course of July and we would write our school comprehensive education plan, uninterrupted, focused on that work. Nothing else was going on. We could just sit down and write that plan. Because of the way things have to be approved and submitted now to the State Education Department by July 30th, it backs up that work from concentrated focus time in the summer to scramble and get it done between March and May, really, after your review is done, while school is still going on, getting your teachers released, staying after school, which creates a challenge in writing those plans. It also creates a challenge in the level of support that we're able to provide those buildings as they write those plans. So Lori, myself, and Michelle made it our life's work for the last 3 months to get to every BLT meeting at least once to try to handhold for an hour to help write those plans. But at the end of the movie, we still get those plans in our first draft deadline and have to review and give feedback because we're not there to take them through the entire process. they get that feedback, and then they're scrambling to fix those things and give those back to us, and then we're trying to clean them up from there. And so we discussed at Cabinet, me bringing this to the board floor, the concept of, instead of having 2 meetings to go through the SEP approval process, could we consider the SEPs as part of the routine consent items so that it would not require 2 meetings? It would not prevent the Board of Education from receiving the SEPs in a timely fashion to review and to give input, and it would not prevent the Board of Education from, when going through the routine consent process, to set aside a plan that they felt, even after review and feedback, was not acceptable for submission to the State Education Department. What that would do is it would give our principals an additional 2 weeks into the summer to pull teams together to do that work in a more concentrated and focused way, to allow Lori, myself, Michelle, and Karen, I'm pulling you in next year, to get to those buildings and provide, some technical support on the ground while they're writing, instead of being reactive, and continue to improve their ability to write these plans. I think that time, even though it's just really ends up being another 2 weeks in the long run for this process, I think it would be well appreciated by the building principals and result in some stronger writing. Even though I will say, and I appreciate the feedback and questions we receive from the Board of Education, each year, the writing of these plans is getting significantly better. And I know that they'll be stronger if we're able to give them that time to focus and concentrate. Principals are taking this work very seriously. It's no longer, if it ever was, a compliance activity. It is about what do we need to do to take the right next step for our building. I think the progress monitoring piece has helped them as well to see, you know what, we may not be monitoring the right things because we're not getting the impact we thought we would get, or we don't even know how to measure what we're asking for. And so we want them to continue to grow in this process and believe in this process, and so we ask for your consideration that you extend this window through them by using the routine consent process.
So a question before you leave that slide. Oh, right onto discussion. So just to frame the discussion on your on what you're asking us is 2 things. One is, we only have 1 meeting in July. Just want to make sure you know that. The second, sorry, the nod is yes, you do. Sorry. Only because we're on tape.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. It's like at a deposition. You must speak or it won't be recorded. The second is that that as part of routine consent, if you were going to pull a SAP, you would still be able, as was done a number of years ago, if necessary, to get an extension with SED if there was 1 or 2. So I just wanted to throw that out there for those on the board that might not know that. It's not like it's, it's done. It's not uncommon for that to be done. And then the third is, when do you want the board's feedback on that? I mean, I could up here hear people and see people nodding. What would you like, what do you envision hearing from us tonight? Or what do you want to know?
It doesn't really impact us until next year's SEP cycle. So if you wanted to, you could actually, when we do the action item at the next board meeting on this year's SEP, you could make your decision then.
Okay, so I will just then ask the board to take it under their thought process for next in July, and then provide the feedback to us all at that time. And that said, so I'm just going to give you an intro quick statement, even though that's not what we normally do. I don't have any questions because I posed my questions. I'm just hoping that the typos, in a sense, or things that were not there will just get cleaned up, only because I have that. I'm not the only one who just wants like an education situation to go in with.
And
this,
if I can say publicly, we're going to advocate strongly that State Education Department stop using the Excel template for this work, because it would make everybody's life, my dear friend Paula, everybody's life much easier, so that people can actually spell check their work and actually navigate the tool more successfully.
That's good. SED needs the feedback. What I do want to say just in the beginning is I feel like Rose now when I say this, being on this board the longest, I used to hate when she said that, but it's true in certain situations, and what you said, I appreciate your taking ownership for the good as well as the bad and the ugly, and saying how much improved they are. The reason I have no questions, and I can approve even the ones I wish had differentiation in them, in particular the one school that we talked about, because I do think that having just mindfulness in there without the point you mentioned is a shortcoming in there. It should have that thing that you talked about in terms of parent feedback. And I don't know if you plan to change it or not, but I do think that that's important. But even if you didn't do that, my feeling about them is there is such a marked difference in the professionalism, the quality, just the fact that these are really good documents, that for me, I can approve them. So please understand that when I give you feedback, it's feedback from, this is that one time when we're in a for me, I mean, I think we shouldn't be doing the day-to-day management in the classroom work. This is the one time that from the SEP plan situation, we have the opportunity to sort of talk about the kind of goals and the almost not 20,000 feet, maybe like 5,000 feet or closer, about things that we know are important levers like differentiation. And, you know, if you don't, it's the old sort of thing like with kids and expectations. If you don't put it out there, then it may not be something to be looked at during monitoring. So that is the reason why with that one review that I did more than that, but that one of the three, where I had the most comments, was because of the fact that I thought that there were just some key concepts that you've talked about and that we've talked about in terms of academic achievement missing. But that said, I am so very appreciative of the reduced time. Yes, it's lengthy, but unless you've lived through days and days of reading these things before, they make sense, they're logical, they're easy to follow. Thank you for all of the extraordinary hard work that goes into it, both your work at this level and all of the work at the principal level and at the BLT level. Please never think for a moment when we have feedback that that is not deep appreciation at this point where this district is for all of the work that all of you do. And then for those who don't know, the way we divided it up this year is that because of the volume and the number of schools we have, yay, we have a lot of schools, is that we divided it up. So those schools for where we are liaisons, we actually reviewed the SEPs, and some who may have had time did others, but that's what I did. So anyway, thank you very, very much. Ellen.
I echo what Sue said about thank you for your hard work. Thank you for all the work you've put into assisting building leaders in this, and thank you for proposing a way that we can make these better for next year. I could definitely see the effects that you'd had. I noticed that there was a lot of consistency among school SEPs, and one thing that I think might have been helpful is to have the stuff that was universal, for example, to each elementary school. Like, for example, the language about the new ELA and math curriculum at the elementary level, or the language about the transition for pre-K to kindergarten. That would have been helpful to separate out and say this is district-wide stuff, so that I didn't have to go back and forth and say, okay, what's specific to this building, what's unique to this building versus what's just the boilerplate, this is what the district is doing. Because I was sort of interested in the case of my liaison schools to know what specific initiatives my buildings were doing. And I think that would have been helpful. I also think it would have been helpful to have the SEPs that were drafted that weren't necessary, the ones for Montessori and North Albany Academy. I think it would have been helpful to those of us who have those liaison schools, not me, but just in general, to see them, just to compare and contrast, and just to have, because these plans do provide us as board members, as Sue said, with such useful information about our schools. But thank you very much. I also submitted some more specific questions about one of my liaison schools where I couldn't understand everything that was in the plan, but in general, just these have become very thorough and very informative guides to what is going on in the building level. Thank you.
And I just will say the feedback is helpful because we're in it, right? And then we put them out in the public on websites and expect people to understand what we're talking about. So when something's not clear to you as a board member, it's helpful for us to understand that as well.
Jen?
So, as Sue said, we went, at least I did too, I went through the schools that I'm liaison for, and some of my questions I'm going to try to do a little bit global. The reason why some of the schools received a limited degree, I was wondering what were the barriers, or why did they get to that, why was there no improvement?
It varies from school to school. So there's, 5 or 6 questions on the overview page about, how well you were funded, how many activities you completed, did you meet all of your goals? And so one of the things my schools learned this year is, even though we talked a lot last year about narrowing the focus, it's hard to narrow the focus. And so some of them built activities that were enormous and very difficult for them to try to accomplish all of them. And so as they went through their progress monitoring documents for the SEPs, and they're like, wow, I got a lot of yellow and I got a lot of red and some things I haven't started. And I said, that's your sign that you tried to take on too much for your building. And so for the activities, I think that really helped them this year, going through the progress monitoring process the way we did it, to write SEPs that are much more refined, and the activities, instead of being 3 disparate activities, are really one large activity that they're piecing out throughout the entire year to increase their likelihood of being successful in implementing all of their activities, and therefore increase their likelihood of having the impact that they so desire. I think the other thing that we learned through our progress monitoring process this year is your leading indicators should be telling you how you're doing as you're going along. And some of the leading indicators were so difficult for them to measure and to track on a regular basis that they weren't able to say if they had impact. And so it's hard to get to your goal if your dipsticks along the way can't really tell you what you need to know. And so we also try to set goals that we feel are within the realm of accomplishment. And some schools have not made that progress, and it really is a reflection of what are the high leverage things that we need to be doing in order to move the needle versus the things that we're comfortable doing. So the SEP teams, I love going around to them, and Ken Robin gets like the heebie-jeebies because we, as educators, love activities. That is like our favorite part. We can't wait to get in the room at the end of the year and go, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do this, and it's gonna be great and fantastic, and we get caught up in that as opposed to what's the most important, most effective thing that we can do to get to this goal. And so this year we really tried to work on that alignment piece so people could say, if I do this, is it going to move this? And how will I know? And so we hope to improve our impact on the goals that we've set for ourselves. Some buildings, because they picked, NWA and their NWA scores have been off the charts, they absolutely made their goals, but other buildings did not get there.
If that's okay, normally we go around one question, but I thought it's okay with the rest of the board. I think it's important that each person gets done, so long as we're not like at the 20-minute, that's what I'm saying. I didn't think you would, but that way it's a little more coherent for them. Thanks.
On most of the schools, again, I'm kind of trying to be global for the schools that I did, and I've looked at a couple others as well. The social emotional, like you said, seems to be the one where most people progressed. And I think that, it's part of the code of conduct and kind of that mentality of children not being out of the classroom. But out of that, it also looked like teachers really wanted behavioral PD. So my question is, where is the linkage with the children not being in the classroom anymore and now being in the classroom and having those behavioral issues that they necessarily weren't seeing? And how has those two things become, I'm sure they're not mutually exclusive, but was that part of that?
If I follow you, students are remaining in the classroom more, and so teachers are recognizing a need to have a stronger skill set with the students remaining in the classroom more. So in shifting our philosophy from, for lack of a better word, a punitive system to a system where we teach children to our expectations, teachers want that. Michelle Bridgewater says, you look at our professional development budget, we've probably spent 95% on academic. How much have we spent on actually preparing our teachers for the social emotional needs of the babies that are sitting in front of them? And I think that was consistent across focus groups during our DTSDE reviews. It's great that we've got PBIS, we've got all these systems, but we need some real training and support on how to support the students who, for them, their behavior is their barrier to learning. So I think they do go hand in hand.
I wanted to also address the tie to this is going to come in a presentation after this, which is the Code of Conduct and Preventative Strategies. We were looking at that, and just within the last month, we're going to go deeper into Tier 1 intervention, which is directly tied to what's the tool the teachers are going to use for strategies inside the classroom. That's being rolled out this summer and going to tie into the Preventive Strategies Code of Conduct. So we actually match what was going on with our SEPs to the Code of Conduct.
I think this is my last one, just really quick. One of the schools that I looked at really said they had a tough time getting the data, or at least realizing they didn't understand the data, that they may have thought they were glossing over or whatever, and now they realize, so I guess what is the role now that we have Kent and all of his data in this process?
So if you look at our DSIP, one of our tenant focuses is on building the capacity of our principals and our buildings to use data in a consistent and systematic way. And so one of the things I noticed, again, from the progress monitoring reports is that I would look at one building, they talk about discipline this way, and I'd look at one building, they talk about discipline this way, and so we weren't talking apples to apples when we were, talking about progress. And so that's one of the things that we are building into our principal PD for next year, is training on how you look at data at the system, at the building level, and in addition to the work that we're doing around data at the classroom level and the data teaming model.
Sridhar.
Last 3 years that I've been watching the progression of these DSIPs and SIPs, it's been very encouraging. I had a few questions that are on the broad scale. One of the questions that I couldn't understand, I was reading at the thing at the description of the BLT, and it says at least one parent, right? Why do we only limit it to one parent?
You don't limit it to one parent. I'm
And
glad you asked.
Is it so difficult to get more than one parent in every school?
In some schools, yes. So the building leadership team is a very technical committee. They're looking at a lot of school-based things, a lot of acronyms, all of those things. And so it's not, your typical building committee. And so it can be difficult for some buildings, not all, some buildings to keep a parent consistently on that team. When it comes to separating in particular, I think you'll notice on, the sign-in sheets, the number of meetings it's taking to write the SEPs. These aren't 1 hour meetings that you're sitting down and writing the SEPs. Schools are investing 60 hours in writing, in detail these SEP plans, and that's a lot to ask a parent to commit to. In addition to having to explain to them what it is that you're actually trying to get through. And so schools that I've seen who've been successful with incorporating parents into their SEP writing have really had the parents work on Tenet 6. And so that, it's not a huge time commitment. You're going to come in, you're going to give us some feedback specifically, or some writing specifically on Tenet 6 and feedback on the rest of the plan. But some schools do struggle to get parents to come consistently to the table for BLT. And as you're supposed to all year have a parent as a BLT rep on your committee, and that does not always happen.
Because why not recruit a group of parents, not that, so that they can divide and conquer kind of. So if you have 40 meetings and there's 4 people.
You need some continuity.
Right, no, I mean, so it's like you are not going to miss every meeting, you're going to miss 1 or 2.
But the hard thing is if you miss a meeting, you can miss you can miss understanding what's actually happening. So literally when we would do our SEP plans, you'd first have to, before you could start writing, sit down and actually explain what all these alphabet soup things are. So what is a DTSDE? Well, we get a school review and we do all these pieces. Then we write this plan and we have to have these pieces, and then we use this data. Like, you have to first basically, teach your parents to be a part of the BLT team. And so that consistency and participation is really important, so that they have an understanding each time they come to the meeting what you're trying to accomplish. Whereas if we cycle people through, which some buildings don't have a choice, it's what they have to do to have that participation, you're kind of reteaching each time you come through. And I think, in sitting with I sat with a parent with one team that I went to help write their SEPs, sitting with that parent for Tenet 6, that was perfect. She had great ideas about, we could do this as a school. Again, activities, because that's what we like to do. And then helping them connect back, we really have to tie to the goal. We really have to make sure it's measurable. Doing that on a smaller scale, I think, is feasible.
But again, even recruiting it through the PTA or a community member, if you have more than one, I'm just saying that even if one misses a meeting, you will still have more input. So you actually involve all stakeholders, right?
I'm sorry, I just want to also add to that, because the team does more than the SEP plan.
Right.
So your team are meeting on everything. So I'm just going to use an example from Myers. They were there for the interviewing. They were there for all of our meetings, and we have been honored to have consistency of that parent, 2 parents. I got Laura back there nodding because she was the building team leader. So it's more than just the SEP plans. This is a commitment to the committee. And when we meet, the length that we meet is not always friendly for our parents. They have to take time off their job, so they have to have the flexibility of that as well. We try to flex to have some things in the evening, but that sometimes I lose the teachers at that point. So you try to do some going back and forth. I think we plan some things at 3:30 and then other ones at 5. You do the best you can, but the consistency of the person on the committee is vital. I got to be honest with you, it's very vital.
True. And a couple more things that I want to ask. I was looking at some of the schools, and one of the barriers that was mentioned was the PD that the teachers have to do, takes them out of the classroom, and that disrupts the continuity. How can you work around that?
So
Because on one hand, you need the PD, on the other hand, you need the teachers in the classroom.
it's a double-edged sword, right? So you have to continue to develop the capacity of teachers, and then this year and last year we've had a particularly difficult time getting sub-coverage to do that professional development work with teachers. And we do have 3 hours available for PD at the elementary level after school. We have a couple conference days throughout the year, but it doesn't end up being enough for what we need to be able to provide our teachers. We do some after-school paid PD and weekend paid PD and summer paid PD, but that requires you to have the child care and all these other pieces in place to be able to participate, and it doesn't guarantee that you get to everyone. And so a lot of times those things that we consider non-negotiable for professional development are the things that are occurring during the school day, so that all teachers that you need to be there can be there, whereas if you're doing offerings after school or on weekends or over holidays for pay, you get who's willing to come out and participate in those things, and you get inconsistent implementation of what you're trying to do. So I don't have a good answer for you in terms of what the solution is to, it's catch-22. Do we, just leave the teachers in the class or, provide them professional development? There are countries where there are built-in weeks and days and, parts of the day where teachers get professional development on a regular basis, and we don't have that built into our system.
Okay. Last question. I was looking at the math scores across the district, and, there's a lot of room for improvement
Yes,
if we just
a
leave
lot.
it at that. What I couldn't figure out was you have the schools that aren't performing and you have the schools that are performing. I couldn't find a correlation with, race or economics or whatever. It's not even when you read the SEPs, it's not like they're the ones who are not performing and saying we didn't get the money. So what can we take from the ones that are working, apply here, and learn from what's not working here?
And I think
in a broad stroke.
I think that's a great point. I think some buildings have focused a little bit more on math and have been able to balance math and ELA. Some buildings have focused more on ELA, but I also think with the introduction of a new math curriculum resource, the introduction of Math Common Core learning standards, our teachers are trying to build their capacity in providing math instruction, and we recognize it as a need. It's the reason that we're converting one of our data coaches into a math coach to provide that support. It's the reason that we're considering some different scheduling options at the elementary level as a pilot to begin to build the capacity of individual teachers teaching mathematics. It's also, I think I've discovered the consistency of the implementation of the response to intervention block for mathematics. And if you are consistently providing response to intervention in homogeneous groups based on student data and what they need, then you're moving those kiddos along in your building, versus if you can't squeeze the RTI math block in, that's the first thing to go, you're probably not filling those holes for those kiddos, and they're moving along a little slower in the process. The buildings that have identified higher order thinking as one of their focus are some of our buildings that are involved in the STEM studio, which I think you approved a contract for it tonight. Those buildings have seen some significant gains, not only in their math instruction, but their ELA instruction, because they're able to take the skills that they're learning about how you deliver good math instruction and apply it across their instruction in general. And really helping teachers understand and provide ongoing support for providing good math instruction. We have a long way to go in all things, but in particular math, the principals are like, yes, we know that this is an area that we need to continue to grow in. And so those two pieces, that RTI block and how effectively that's being utilized, and potentially some buildings are looking at departmentalizing so that one teacher becomes the math expert and can deliver that math instruction consistently across a grade level. But departmentalization has other implications for student social emotional health and how low in the grades we can go with that. So some school districts, they departmentalize starting as early as 3rd grade so that they get that specialized instruction from the content expert. But we're asking each building to give a try to at least one grade level, either 5th or 6th grade, to have a content expert and see if we see a difference in that instruction. And most buildings, we're asking to ensure that their RTI block is sacred space for mathematics as well as it is for ELA.
And I'm guessing the STEM coordinator that you guys had asked for the elementary level will also help with the consistency.
Very much so.
Thank you.
Vicki.
Well, again, I want to echo just the thanks for the work that everyone is doing, your leadership and staff work on this. A number of questions were asked by my colleagues, and Ms. Wilson-Turner, you've answered questions that I had as well. Doctor, I know, I'm sorry. And I usually don't mess that up. I'm sorry.
You guys are better at it than I am.
I usually am saying doctor this and doctor that. Okay. So, but I do want to ask, it kind of goes to Ellen's question, and it's about the uniqueness, and maybe I'm going to just use the word differentiation there too, not just around, like, so, for instance, you talk, in some of these areas, there is a lot of talk about practices, but it's too broad. So I wondered sometimes, like IE, what does that mean in this, what did you do? Even PD for teachers, what's different about the PD? I mean, maybe they're always together, I'm not sure, but I know you do some things that are very unique in each building. But what's different about what these teachers are getting in this school because of the students they have, because of their own needs? And so I mean, I just thought it was a very good read all the way through, but there were still some times where I felt, and I'm thinking about this from a parent or a public view, that's a great sentence, but I'm not sure exactly what that's telling me always. And maybe just a few, like when we say things like practices or PD, that if it's something that helped move that goal, get us to that goal, it should kind of maybe be in, I don't know, parentheses or expressed more fully. And that's the only other thing I wanted to add. Does that make sense?
Actually naming the practice?
If that's what...
So for example, instead of just saying higher order thinking, we used et cetera to achieve higher order thinking.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, and only because, only if that is something that was so critical to that population, that the data tells you that's the one area that you've got to strengthen out of our students, then it should be reflected then in PD.
Okay.
I'm just, and there are a couple of areas I just thought, but otherwise I thought it was a great read all the way through, and I like your response to Jen's question about focus, because I was starting to feel too like, okay, last year I saw 50% or less, and it didn't really move. So what's the problem there, or what's the challenge there? So thank you.
Anne.
So I think this is somewhat related to what Vicki was talking about. One of the schools that I reviewed talked about doing a SEP at a glance, like we did a DSIP at a glance, and I think that would be really helpful for families to understand what's happening, because I know part of the SEP process is supposed to be conveying to the family so that the whole community understands it. And the DSIP at a glance, I'm looking at Karen who wrote it, was really an effective tool, and that could actually tie in Ellen's comment about the district-wide and the specific school things. That could make it easier to understand if it was in the at a glance document, because I think that could really be the tool that makes these documents live for non-professional educators. And as part of that, my question was twofold. One, is every school going to do an at a glance? And two, does that include Montessori and North Albany?
So Lori just leaned over and said, I have a template, but some of our schools do. It isn't a consistent practice across our schools. So it is something that we could ask them to put together, because I do think it's the schools that do it find it very helpful. It's very easy for their staff to kind of rattle off what's happening in their building as a result, and so therefore it would be helpful for families. And yes, we could ask that of Montessori and North Albany. And in full transparency, Montessori and North Albany were on the same schedule as everybody else. They've submitted theirs for feedback, but they honestly were put to the back burner because they don't have to come to the fore and go to state ed. So we will get those to you so that you can review those for your liaison schools as well, because I do want to thank them. Their school's in good standing, but we say, guess what? We want you to have a comprehensive education plan as well.
Yeah, so I think that would be great, and with the new timing that you're proposing, it might make it possible for those things to happen. I don't know. So about the new process, I wanted to raise my voice that I'm very comfortable with doing it in one meeting. I think I would prefer, rather than calling it routine consent, and I understood more hearing you verbally why you wanted to do that, because you were really trying to end run the discussion action. The board has the option of putting it on for discussion action. We can do that. We can make that exception. We normally reserve that for when Bill says the bond market's going to move and we need to do this like tomorrow. Is when we usually do it, but we can do that when we need to. And in this case, we could decide as a board that we need to. I'm not super comfortable putting it in routine consent because I really want to reserve routine consent for things that are in fact routine, and these never feel routine to me. And then The other process thing, which I think I said when we talked about the DSIPs, was, and I realize that the state establishes this calendar. I realize that. But while you're advocating for a non-Excel tool, I would like to advocate, and I would like to think in our own minds about how we can use the system to feed the budget, right? The problem to me is that these plans come after the budget, right? The principals have to make their requests to cabinet about what they want in December, but then they write their plan in whatever month are we into, June, right? That's crazy, right? If you're asking for the money in December, mentally you know what the plan is already, right? Because you've said what you need to implement what should be your plan. So we've got the things out of order, which I realize is required by the budget calendar and the SEP calendar, but I feel like somehow we should be trying as a district to figure out how we can use these tools to really plan. And if we're really using them to plan, then we really have to be doing them before we adopt the budget. And I realize that I'm creating a whole nightmare for you, and basically you'd have to end up doing 2 plans in 1 year to kind of shove things forward. I get that. But otherwise, the plan is retroactive to the budget. And if the budget is important, which it has to be, then somehow it has to end up upside down. And that's not a question. I'm not expecting you to answer that. I'm just like putting it out there that I would like the planning to proceed somehow before the budget. Do you want to talk about that? You can answer, or you can just say.
I agree. But one of the things that the schools, each school, focus school and priority school gets is the SIG-A basic grant. And that usually comes out in August, early September to support the implementation of the SEP plans. So that is another funding source for our schools.
That's helpful to understand. And then the last thing I'm going to mention is PTAs. Not every school mentions PTAs, and I know not every school has a functioning PTA, but there are schools that have a functioning PTA that don't mention it in 10 at 6. And I can send you an email with some of that, but I think that's, if you have a PTA that's got the possibility of succeeding, building them into 10 at 6 so that you're treating that entity respectfully and building that up would be helpful.
Thank you so very much. And the last topic, as you guys vacate your seats, is Code of Conduct Preventative Strategies Plan Update. So while everybody's getting set, Tim, I just want to say that you missed the lovely tribute, the words that Dr. Wilkins said on your behalf. So we will just say that in addition to her talking about what a fine fellow you are, an excellent employee, is to say that thank you for all the years, both at this building and at PPS and all the years in the district in general that you have given. And we definitely from the board wish you well as you return home to South Colony.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So certainly it's home at Toast, and a lot of memories here, good memories, and growing up in Albany just down the street, and the high rise that used to be called 63 Morton Avenue. So to be able to look up at the hill and be able to become the principal is certainly an honor and serve our community. Last but not least, bringing up the rear on the agenda on tonight is an update of the Office of Attorney General report, and a lot of work has gone forward throughout the district. Presenting on tonight is myself, my assistant Carla McDowell, our ombudsperson Valerie Scott, and our independent monitor Dr. Maxine Fantroy Ford. And in terms of, oh, this is interesting. All right. So you can play with that. So these first three things here are actually aligned with the assurance of discontinuance. There are specific activities and initiatives that were part of that agreement that we have with the Office of Attorney General. First and foremost is the culturally responsive education training that has been ongoing. We are now, I believe, on our third year, if you count the year that we did with TAC-D with the administrative group. This particular year, there were 4 cohorts that were trained, and a key piece of the work that we were able to do at the end of the school year is begin to build internal capacity in terms of train the trainer. So we had 4 district staff, I was one of them, that actually co-presented with Dr. Maria Hernandez from TAC-D. Also, we got on the quote-unquote party bus and we headed down to New York City for the full-day NYU conference, which they call the Summer Institute. A lot of powerful speakers, a lot of information that we were able to bring back that will affect some system changes.
Hello, Carla McDowell, Assistant Director, Pupil Personnel Services. So the next 3 initiatives really fit under Section 7, which is preventative strategies, and in our assurance of discontinuance. So they fit under classroom management, behavioral support for staff, as well as supports for struggling students. So 2 of them are on this one slide. That's the social academic intervention groups, known as SAG. So the SAG subcommittee had met, and they reviewed all of the different resources available in districts, not only in New York State, but across the United States. And what they did is they compiled a comprehensive resource of different curriculums, and members of the SAG group have been able to start to train and show other individuals, particularly like our school counselors, as well as our psychs and psychologists, behavioral specialists. So all these groups are starting to understand what the resources are, and we will continue that work. This particular group is really targeting our Tier 2 students. So another initiative is mindfulness. I heard it mentioned earlier today. So mindfulness is, has been in pockets throughout the district. So as part of the My Brother's Keeper Challenge grant, we were able to expand that, and we have a plan that's in works to have more of alignment in our cohorts. So different levels of implementation have been identified, and now there's a plan to look to how to continue the work in each of those cohort areas.
Okay, the next area is restorative practice. Through the My Brother's Keeper Challenge grant, we were able to partner with the New York State Defenders Association and work with 2 consultants who were able to train the first cohort of participants. Approximately 20 staff participated in that training, along with a few community members. As you can see, there was a mixed group of representation. I think restorative practice is certainly a key piece in beginning to address disproportionality as it relates to suspension, as couple key focuses in that particular training is around repairing harm when an incident has happened. It's a focus that actually is responsive to both the student that caused the harm, and then also supportive to the student and faculty and repairing relationships. And there's a real communal piece around that. The participants that were able to participate in the first 2 days of training ended up being certified, and they are certified in restorative practice and conducting conferences from informal conferencing all the way to more formal and to address serious incidents. We continue to build capacity around that. Just a snapshot into next year, we are planning to have 2 to 4 staff members become train-the-trainer. So again, building that internal capacity, and also another group of participants. And one of the things that is really important in the training is the normative mix. The first cohort, we had community members, but cohort 2 will be looking to also bring in parents and students to be trained, and so that they can help support that process as well. Okay, so this is just a summary of the actual areas that we are required to report on as relates to the Office of Attorney General. Our office, myself, PPS, Lori McKenna, Assistant Superintendent, Valerie as the ombudsperson, and our data coordinator actually put together something that went beyond compliance and actually created a tool, which is the workbook that allowed the district as well as schools to be reflective of their own data, have discussion, and then actually talk about some tentative next steps. The next slide, if she can figure it out, there's a full report, but what we wanted to do was just highlight one particular slide in that report that looks at the comparison of 2013-14, which is the baseline year, there we go, and 2016-17, and this is data that runs through May 31st. And so as you look at the top chart, it's reflective of the percentage of students that were suspended one or more times. The two subgroups that are particular groups that were identified in the Attorney General's report was the students with disability subgroup as well as our Black student subgroup. That continues to be an area where there's overrepresentation. And table 5-6, which is not reflected in the PowerPoint but is in the report, you can see the progress that the district is making in terms of the actual number of suspensions. By way of example, it was, I believe, when you look at 4-9 of the report, just by way of example. So in 2013-14, there were 401 students suspended with disabilities, and then this year, the actual suspension of students with disabilities dropped to 240, so that was significant, but there's still disproportionality. Similarly to our African American subgroup, 1,164 number of actual students that were suspended. This year it was at the point of May 766, but that disproportionality, that ratio has not moved. So the number is moving down, but the disproportionality still exists.
So, as Tim stated, the previous slide really talked about what was required in our end of the year report for the Attorney General. We also felt that it was important to really compare our baseline year to our current year in regards to referrals of students for the superintendent hearing process. So I think, as you know, that a principal can suspend for up to 5 days. But if a student has violated the code of conduct, particularly a level 4, and it's believed that this was a very unsafe, dangerous behavior, that principal can refer to the superintendent process for an extended suspension. So this slide here represents a comparison of the baseline year of 2013-14 to our current year. And of course, for data purposes, we had to stop at May 31st because we're not doing the year yet. But it just shows us that in 2013-14, 610 students were referred to the hearing process. It is hard to see on this scale, but I can quickly tell you that it was 77 elementary, 138 middle school, and 343 high school. So then our current year, you can see by the graph, it's drastically lower by 440. As elementary was 11, middle school 84, and high school 75. So it's kind of flipped. As you can see by the graph, it's slightly noticeable that the orange is actually higher than the yellow. So again, that was for all students. The next slide is specific to only students with disabilities. So the next slide is kind of in line. In 2013-14 school year, there was a total of 125 students referred to the superintendent hearing process, whereas in our current year through May 31st, it was 44 students. So a difference of 81. And I'll just give you the numbers quickly. It's elementary in 2013-14 was 11, middle school 45, and high school 69. And then in our current year, elementary was 1, middle school was 20, high school was 23. And we will pass all these down to everybody else.
Good evening. I didn't know a year ago when I sat before you what the job would be completely, because I've learned a lot this year. I didn't know that my name would become the NAG over the AOD, because I can tell you that I carry it everywhere I go, and I simply say, number 45 of the AOD on page such and such says. So that's what I've learned. The word monitor and NAG go gently in hand, because I'm the one who says, we got to keep doing this. I've also learned about the word consistency, because that is something that I didn't know would be needed until I started going to meetings. So a year ago, there were things that you asked me and things that we talked about. I went back and looked at what one of your questions was last year, which was, how was I going to be able to be in the district enough? So I want you to know that I have been in the district every single week, with even the week that I had 103 temperature. Didn't know that I had 103 temperature, because I've managed to do it in smaller parts of days instead of doing a whole day. So that was one of your questions. The other question was, how was I going to be able to respond to parents? And so I want you to know that if you call me on my line, it registers on my computer and I can hear it on my cell phone. So I did want to make sure that I went back to your original questions and found out how I could do them. But I just want to take you through a little bit of the year. I will tell you that Tim helped me with my slides, just getting them to look up, to fit on the slides. Getting it into 5 slides was really hard, but I thought you didn't want me to talk all night, and I could. So I'm just going to update you on what the year's been like and some of the things that we've done. So just to remind you that my job is to help the district set timelines, to set deadlines, and to nag that they're making sure that those things are getting done as according to the AOD. I work with Maxine closely. We talk often. We schedule our time so that at least within a 2-week period, we've met at least a few hours to go over Attorney General questions and also district questions, so that we're on the same page when she's transferring information to them. I've worked with the district staff to create a professional development plan and keep staff informed of the Code of Conduct and the Preventative Strategies Plan. So some of the other things that we've done is we had 5 parent universities this year that I attended all of them, and I did 4 listening forums, 2 in the fall and 2 in the spring for staff, where they could come and tell me anything. And one of the important pieces of that was that they told me what grade level they were at, but they did not tell me their names. So they felt free to be as frank as possible about their concerns. And that information was then given to the superintendent to be shared with other staff, and also shared with Tim as the director of PPS. I met with the union leadership of all of our heads of unions, and I actually even presented to the executive board of APSTA. We did administrative training on the AOD and the Preventative Strategies Plan as required by the AOD. I sit on the Code of Conduct and Preventative Strategies committees to make sure that they're working within the perimeters of the AOD. I've done site visits to all of the schools to get feedback on the Preventative Strategies Plan. One of the big things that I tried to observe, because they're required to submit what they're doing for struggling students, which has been the RTIB process, It's not called RTIB anymore, it's now PBIS Tier 2, Tier 3. But I've seen the change this year as they've become more systematic and consistent. And so in doing that, their students, when they move, the data's able to move with them, as well as the information about families and those kinds of things, because it's a much more consistent process from school to school. I actually review building data. I look at the data dashboard at least twice a week. I can tell you some schools, they're in my head already about why they're disproportionate. It could be one student could make a school disproportionate. So I'm always reviewing those. Also monthly I review from the buildings their resource request, what they're doing for positive rewards, what they're doing for struggling students. At times I look at anywhere from 20 to 120 Google documents that talk about what particular teachers are doing in particular schools, so that I can share with Tim or a different staff member if I have a question about why a particular number is so high. I meet monthly with a subgroup, and we talk about the preventative strategies, and they've been really valuable because that subgroup has helped to develop some of the questions that we want to ask when we do the site visits, and some of the questions for the larger preventative strategies committee, and also help to develop questions that will actually lead us into next year. Their last task was to talk about what information do we still feel like we're not able to provide for preventative strategies. So one of the things that the preventative strategies, and you'll hear this later on in the year, has done is to really define some of those preventative strategies. What does it mean when I say I'm prompting a student? My favorite one is ignoring the behavior and moving on. That means something different to every single person. So what we're trying to do is develop some consistency, so that, not that it's exactly the same in every classroom, but so that everybody has an understanding of it and that we get to the same place. We've worked to, I talk about the word consistent. You hear me say monitor and consistent. Those are my two vocabulary words this year. I was an elementary principal, so I have vocabulary words. And so we're trying to become more consistent around reporting discipline, because if we look at it, we have a couple of different ways at different levels. So we're trying to make it so that if you click on the data dashboard, I can very quickly see how many children have been suspended in a particular month at a different level. But we're not there yet. So we're working to become more consistent. I mentioned the PBIS Tier 2, 3 meeting information, and we're continuing to work on the preventative strategies plan. Over the summer and at the beginning of September, we'll be developing an update to the preventative strategies plan that's required as part of the AOD. There were 6 different meetings that were set up to hear the families talk about the code of conduct and to hear what they thought about it. We had E&L families, we had a variety of different families to hear what they thought about the process. We had some students at one of the last meetings, and I sat with several of the students in the last group. They are very vocal and very articulate about what they do and don't like about the code of conduct. So I think that's important, because even though it's important to have staff feedback and parent feedback, having the actual students that it affects directly on a day-to-day basis and have their feedback is also very important. So we've had 8 parent complaints over the past year, and I'm happy to say that they've all been resolved. I tell parents often, if you were going to call Channel 6, call me first. I know that my name gets to people, that they can call me if there's a question or something like that, because I've been stopped on my way into church on Sunday mornings. I've been stopped in the supermarket. Those, fortunately, I was just able to answer a question, did not lead to the formal complaints, but we were able to resolve the complaints to the satisfaction of the parents that we contacted. In some cases, it meant that I attended a meeting with them. In one particular case, I gave my home cell phone number, so I've learned a lesson, because that parent felt very comfortable calling me every day for about a week. So I did learn a lesson about that one. It's good. It's always good to learn. I did review and summarize the climate survey and made several recommendations to ensure that more families were involved in the survey for next year. I've worked with Tim to just continue to make sure that we're in compliance with the AOD and that we're meeting all those deadlines, because I think it's important that we remember we're not going to change this in 1 year. It didn't happen in 1 year. We're not going to change it in 1 year. But what we do have to do is begin to change systems and make changes that will affect future years. And when we talked to the Attorney General's office, one of the things that they said was that they wanted to see systematic changes. So I'm very happy to report to you that we are beginning to make those systematic changes. It was, in part, we had to learn what some of the changes needed to be. And so the principals will tell you that if I don't get data on a certain day, my NAG person comes out and I say I need that data, and we talk about why it's important. And we'll talk more about why it's important. We've already started planning for what kind of information we're going to need next year to be in total compliance with the AOD. So that's kind of where I am. Like I said, it's been a year, a very interesting year. I know that the numbers don't 100% show. We'd love to just say we waved a wand and turned it around. We're not going to be able to. And I think it's very realistic to say we are making progress. The district is working very hard to meet the requirements of the AOD, and I think that's very important, because when I looked at our AOD and I looked at Syracuse's AOD, ours was much more detailed and had a lot more specific requirements, and the fact that we're able to meet those and keep up with our deadlines and our timelines is really something to say in 1 year. And it's certainly, we'd like the disproportionality to be gone, but again, it didn't happen in 1 year. We're not going to be able to change it in 1 year.
And then it comes to me, the independent monitor, to tell you and to give you input on the progress of the implementation of the provisions. And as my role is to continue to monitor the provisions of the assurance of discontinuance, that the district is in compliance. It has certainly been a journey this year, an eye-opener, and we've been working to implement systems, but systems that will be sustainable and that you will see the impact. And as Tim mentioned, the data may not be where you want it to be, and it's still that disproportionality, but looking at doing an analysis of the systems that have been implemented and constantly refining them or seeing what's working and what's not working, not only at the district level, school level, but within the classrooms. So we have the preventive strategies, and that has been revised with input from district staff. I had an opportunity to go to a banquet and met some students from Albany High who participated on the code of conduct last year, got feedback from them, and they said, wow, we were really pleased with the one this year, what it looks like and the information that is in it. So it's really good to be out in the community and hearing the feedback from people. So my reports to the Attorney General's office in the school district will always serve to provide an overview and status of each provision outlined in the assurance of discontinuance. The reports include a summary and often specific recommendations associated with provisions. All those reports are available in the superintendent's office. I will also, the school district will submit an end-of-the-year report, which is just a sampling of what you hear tonight and you see tonight for the school year 2016-2017, and this is the first one. Once that is completed, I will review the report and summarize my data submission to the OAG's office. A status of specific provisions and recommendations will also be included in my report before I send it on. The school district end-of-the-year report will be submitted to the OAG for review and feedback with the independent monitor's final report. So I will have a conversation with them once they get my end-of-the-year report, which also includes your data. With the past quarterly reports that were submitted, there were often recommendations, and the last page of my slide will just give you some examples of recommendations that I put forth, and at the district level, it would be to comment back
where you approve or not or make additional suggestions. So one of the recommendations was to consistently, we use that word consistently, and the consistently has always come out as a word presented in forums by teachers, students, parents. Everybody wants everything to be consistent. So consistently convene a district level team to meet quarterly just to review and analyze the data that's been collected. It's valuable data that's on that dashboard. As Val said, she and I, we look at that dashboard, we communicate and say, well, this school, this is where it's at, the district, what is happening and why, and we have all those questions. If it's happening in this building, why isn't it happening in that building? But being also able to go to the schools and have those conversations with teachers and administrators this year. Next year, my role, I will expand it to the paraprofessionals to be in there and also to hear the students, feedback from the students. To review and analyze data, develop the next steps for the district and school, and to see if what trends exist, and prepare information for annual end-of-year report. Professional development plan, a recommendation was put into just the site because it's happening, but it's not written, or maybe it is, but just to include what is happening in the district for administrators, teachers, and paraprofessionals, anything targeting communication for professional development, for communicating with diverse student population, parents, and just to record it. Ongoing monitoring of communication protocols to ensure consistency in administration of the code of conduct, disciplinary procedures within and across district schools. Monthly or however a venue platform to review and obtain feedback from all administrators on the performance in accordance with the AOD provisions on due process, disproportionality, discipline referrals, and impact of preventative strategies. And all the information and everything that's collected, and mentioning successes and those areas that need improvement and continuing monitoring to be in compliance with the AOD's office. Thank you. My focus areas for next year will include most of the provisions in the assurance of discontinuance around hearings and manifestation hearing data. I will also be looking at interviewing parents as a result of their hearing process and getting input from them. Students with disabilities data, revisions to the code of conduct, ongoing preventive strategy data in our meetings, due process, and summary of parent complaints in the code of conduct community forums.
Thank you very much. That was certainly thorough. Sridhar.
Questions?
Jen?
I sort of have a question statement. I just want to say how this mirrors the SEP that we just kind of put together. I feel that the academics is really needed in like some of the next steps. I'm so happy to see the numbers have decreased as pure as just numbers. I'm still concerned, obviously, about the race. We're not getting to that, but like you know, we can't do it in a day. And I think some of those things also, it's not just black and white, but there's economic factors, there's academic factors, and I think that's part of the overall work as the district as well. The PD, critically important, teachers are saying it, so that's being addressed, so thank you very much for everything.
Ellen? I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing the report and describing in more detail what you've been doing and the types of contacts you've had with parents and members of the community. In particular, I was really excited to hear about the restorative practice piece and anything more that you or the cabinet can say about that, or anything more that building leaders can say about how that's being implemented. I've heard great things about it, and I'm glad to see it being brought in Albany to worked into part of the code of conduct. Thanks.
Vicki?
Thank you. I mean, I do. Could you do me a favor? Could you give me just an example of success? one of you. I know you, but Maxine, you said, you actually talked about success stories, I thought. that
Oh,
you
I
were-
said to be able to highlight.
Can you
excuse me,
highlight something for me today?
Highlight success. Well, first of all, I would say starting with the code of conduct, just the code of conduct and the input from the community forums. That's a success. Having community forum students articulating their concerns and having a voice. Preventive strategies, putting systems in place that are long overdue, but recognizing that there is a need and that the district does have a problem with disproportionality and discipline. I think those are successes, acknowledging, putting it in place, and realizing that it's ongoing and it's here to stay, and it's about student success. At the building levels, those teams that have been established to look at the data. So now we're going to drill down further when we analyze the data from not only the district level, the building level, the classroom level, but even the teacher level. What type of professional development could be provided for teachers to support them in order to ensure that students are successful? What trends are we seeing? And then realizing that the decrease may be just incremental, but overall, the systems that are now being put in place to be sustainable and to make change at a larger level and impact.
Yes, so I think one particular success, I mean, there are lots, but on one of the site visits, one of the building administrators talked to me about how having to look at their data monthly and having to look at the code of conduct and the preventative strategies meant that they were changing how they used their hall monitors and how those hall monitors were going into classrooms and interacting with students. So I think that's a success because we all own our students. You know, you don't own these 5 students over here and these 5 over here. You own all of them. So if everybody in the building starts to own it, it really becomes a way we'll make changes. And I'll give you one more because that's one of my favorite ones, is in one of the other schools, I went and I heard about a program they were doing at lunch to improve lunch behavior. And it was the people who were in charge of lunch that told me what they were doing and what the rewards were going to be and how children were earning it. And I thought, what real ownership that they could explain to me. They didn't need the building principal to do it. They didn't need a teacher to do it. These are the people who every day are right there in lunch. They created it, they monitor it, and they were showing me pictures. I could have spent an hour and a half just with the 2 women because they were so proud of themselves and how the children were accomplishing. So that's an area, you know, lunch is always an interesting area. And that was a really success. So I think we need to just promote more of those kinds of things.
Thank you, because I needed a little bit of that.
I want to add to that, though, because we're starting to see the beginning of the change of a culture of our schools and our district. We got to start off with the family-friendly code of conduct. That was like a thumbs up. People are still using that form, that pamphlet, so that's new, because usually you get the code of conduct and it kind of sits on the wall under a desk, holding up a desk, and it's not doing that right now, and we're still having conversations about it. The preventive strategies, we did some mid-year changes. We had conversation with APSTA, with APSU, things were going on. We talked about the PBIS and the point system. So we were able to bend and flex like we never have done that before because we had beginning of systems in place and folks in place doing that accountability that the AWARE we talked about last year, a year ago. We have accountability of the procedures that we put in place last September and August. The other thing is that it's consistency of the plan. And that is a success. And we said we're going to do quarterly meetings. We did quarterly meetings. We said we're going to include the parents. We did include the parents. Val is a NAG. I love my NAG. I love her because she lets us know right on point, are you in compliance or you're not in compliance? Are you following the plan? And I just think, you know, thinking about where we were a year ago, and then Tim took the realm, and I met with him. I said, this is the charge. I cannot say enough about what we were able to accomplish in less than a year. It's mammoth. So I think that alone is success.
Anne?
So first of all, I think the decrease in the number of suspensions and the decrease in the number of superintendent's hearings is clear that something has changed in the district, right? Obviously, there has been a massive change in 1 year, which is pretty remarkable to my mind. It is very true, and I appreciate your keeping me honest, internally honest about the fact that we can't change this in 1 year. We cannot change this in 1 year, and it's good for me to have that as my mantra, because I would really like, when we do this kind of a report, for you guys to also include the ratios for student suspensions, which is in the printed report, the PDF, because when you do all the math and you come up with the ratios, it's not just that things didn't get better in terms of disproportionality, it's actually that things got worse. And so I realize that that's math, and it's probably 1 or 2 students in this, and so I shouldn't freak out about that. But I do think we have to be honest with the fact that that's the metric that we're trying to change, right? These are the numbers, where we went from, for African American students, 3.5 to 5.0 is our ratio. That number's supposed to be going down, and it went up. So I would really like to see these slides highlighted, because we need to be frank about the fact that it did not change in a year. And it will. I know it will. The systems are there. We're making progress. I believe it's not a matter of faith, but it's a matter of keeping the transparency really up there about what it is that we're trying to do. And then the last thing I just wanted to say was to thank you for the cafeteria example, because it really speaks to something that I've talked about a lot of times from this seat, which is that circle of respect. Respecting our staff, and when I say staff, I'm specifically meaning staff as opposed to faculty, and treating them with respect, they will treat the children with respect, and that constant circle of respect, and believing that we're all in this together. Every single adult in that building is really important, and I think that's a perfect example of watching that happen, giving them ownership of what they were doing, and having them believe in themselves and believe in the way they could affect children's lives. And so I really like that example, and I appreciate it.
So, thank you, and yes, the kudos all around for that. Just to build a little bit on what Ann said, is I think around this board, if not all of us, many of us have been in lunchrooms, either as mentors or just visiting school, and witnessed over the years sometimes screaming being done to our kids. Once I had to go back, no, the adults. One time I had to actually call, I think I was on the board then, or it might have been really early, and I kind of couldn't let it go, so I then spoke about it, but to the superintendent. But, it's really a problem. So we as a board, and then I appreciate the lunchroom example, and also the hall monitor one, because we as a board talked over a year ago about the importance of making sure before the AOD was even signed, so we're going back maybe 2 years, but we talked about the importance of training, doing PD for APSU, not just for APSTA and APSA, because of the fact that we believe that they have an integral role in the education of our students, and education meaning SEDH and not just academic. So it is heartening to hear that there's movement in those areas, and that respecting the impact they have on the educational process every day, sometimes even more than maybe a classroom teacher. If we have sometimes kids not in the classroom all the time, there's maybe a relationship they have. So hearing the hall monitors actually coming into the classroom and helping, it sounds like that part is working. Also, building on what Ann said, I just wanted to say that, just my opinion, but I don't find it helpful to get the bar charts that were in the report. I appreciate the thoroughness in 17 pages, but the bar charts, the problem with them is they're in isolation. So here, we all knew once from reading it that we were significantly down in the raw data, in the numbers. So as opposed to having a large number of suspensions, we're down significantly, and that is laudable for all of the work there. But then seeing bar charts for sort of like the subgroup doesn't help, because we know that the issue is disproportionality. And I also just want to say in a positive way that once you bring the numbers down, then 1 or 2 students can skew it. So one of the things about having a much smaller group in your data is that you can actually go from 3.5 to 5, or whatever the ratios are, and it can actually be the tiniest fraction of that group that then skews it. But for the board, certainly for next year, when you come back and meet with us, we pretty much know that you guys are working really, really hard, and so very appreciative of it. And you can just give us the stuff that we need to help you fix. And to that end, I only have one question, and that is, what do you think for this coming year are going to be, not the magical beans sort of elixir piece, but what do you think is going to be, whether it's one or more things, that are going to help actually impact the disproportionality piece for the two subgroups? What sorts of things are sort of on your plate, what you're looking at, that we'll see some work in that, or what you've identified? Thanks.
Okay, I think I would draw that back to the three core areas of CRE, which is policy, practices, and beliefs. And one of the things that we're going to be looking at on both sides of the house of academics as well as behavior is the beliefs piece, and moving that from there, because if we as a system don't believe certain things in terms of that we can get our students to have positive outcomes, both academically and behaviorally, then the work is futile. So we will be looking at that. I think another key piece is that we're beginning to have initial conversations around academics and behavior, getting married. And so we're going to begin looking at not that we haven't, but we're going to get really strategic about looking at our students holistically and building team capacities to do that work.
So thank you, and I will be less, not polite, but I'll be a little more direct than you, Tim. And that is, when you just spoke, I thought those are great answers and they're very helpful. The first answer you gave when you said, the expectations, or the belief system rather, the beliefs that our students can achieve. So I think what we're talking about is Black children and children with disabilities.
Correct.
So it's important that at the board that, and you're leaving, but at the board that you all please remember that these are conversations where we need to say those things. We need, when we're talking, to not talk about the beliefs around students being able to succeed, who we may not have the expectations of, because we do have it for our white students. So let's call it what it is. Let's talk about it, and let's talk about those students, because if we don't use the right words and we don't identify the groups where those beliefs are not where they need to be, we actually can't change it. And I know you all say it to each other, so understand that when you're with us, because I know it's public, but that's even more important. And this is the time when we do our work. We open meetings, so we have to do it publicly. So let's always, when we talk about this and talk about the disproportionality in the movement, talk about the fact that not everyone, but unfortunately some, do not all share the view in our district. And in the country at large, we're just a microcosm of it, unfortunately, that children of color and children of disabilities can achieve academic success. And it doesn't matter where that level is. We're not talking everybody getting a 98, everybody getting a 78. We're talking about achieving academic success, and not, and that behavior problems sometimes are related to other things, and there are different ways of doing it. So again, it wasn't so much, I don't mean it as a criticism, but understand that we're with you in this fight. We're slogging through it with you. And when we talk about it, I think there's just, again, my opinion, when we use the right language around it, it helps us be able to identify what's going on and be able to make the improvements. So thank you so much. And the advantage of sitting and hearing you, especially Valerie and you, Maxine, after a year, is to really hear the, that you're up to your elbows in this and all the work that you're doing, and to see the difference in terms of really having you had the year to wrap your arms around the work that is being done. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to adjourn? Ms. Smith, seconded by Dr. Chator. All in favor? We're adjourned.